Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Wyatt Andrews. Over this past weekend, from Texas to Pennsylvania, angry protesters shouted down Democrats at public events as the Democrats attempted to push their version of health care reform. These crowds are partly the result of conservative and libertarian websites urging their supporters to attend these town halls. But the turnout also seems to reflect a level of real fear and confusion over the taxes, unknown costs, and government controls the reforms will bring. The anger at times has led some Democrats to complain the protesters were there to disrupt the events, not to enter a dialogue. So joining us today is Politico's Josh Kraushaar to talk about these town halls and the emerging town hall strategy from these more conservative groups. And Josh, we already know that this is not the August recess Democrats were hoping for.
No, it's not, Wyatt. And, town hall meetings are usually pretty low-key state affairs. You have a couple dozen constituents coming up with the pressing concerns of theirs. But this past week, we've seen town hall recesses across the country in very unusual parts of the country, whether you're talking about the Hamptons, where you don't really think of Republican activism as a first thought, all the way to downtown Philadelphia to Austin, Texas. And hundreds of Republican activists have stormed a lot of these meetings and really caused quite a bit of disruption. And a lot of it is being ginned up by outside groups, by conservative and Republican activists, but there is a lot of pressure on the White House and the administration, with the administration advancing a very ambitious health care reform legislation, and it's showing up at the grassroots level. The Republican base has been energized in ways that they haven't in quite some time.
Josh, let's have a quick look at what we're talking about. Let's show our audience some tape from Saturday. What you're going to see is Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett of Texas. He represents a constituency in the Austin area, and he has complained that the people surrounding him, they began to surround him and shout, "Just say no, just say no." You can see signs in the background where some of these protesters say, "Do not vote for government-run health care reform." Doggett has complained that he felt like he was not being confronted with people who were genuinely there for any kind of discussion, but were more there to shout him down. He described the group as a mob. And Josh, I wonder what you saw in situations like this. You mentioned also Long Island. We also know that it happened in Pennsylvania. What are you seeing here that's unusual?
Well, the most striking thing with those three examples you just mentioned these are among the most democratic parts of the country. These are areas of the country that overwhelmingly voted for Obama, and polls show they support his health care legislation. So the notion that there's a grassroots activism in those areas is somewhat unlikely. It suggests that you're seeing the pressure of outside groups. On the other hand, though, these are areas where you would expect a lot of Democrats to show up at town hall meetings, to show their support, to counteract a lot of this protest movement, and we're not necessarily seeing it, at least at a widespread level, among Democrats. So the activism, the enthusiasm that these activists helped in electing President Obama, we're not quite seeing it quite yet in terms of trying to help him pass his signature piece of legislation. So we want to stay tuned in the next few weeks to see how Democrats respond to the Republican protesters, but it's not a good sign when in the first week of the August recess, members of Congress who are taking a pivotal vote are getting enormous pressure no matter where it's coming from.
And let me ask your take on what you see out there. Do you think that, do you have an idea of what percentage, though, is very real? I mean, there is a level of confusion over this. There are people out there who believe that the government that just bailed out General Motors cannot be put in charge of health care. I mean, some of that is absolutely real, wouldn't you say?
Perception is reality, and when you see images of angry and concerned constituents and protesters at a very significant number of town hall rallies across the country, that's a bad image for the administration to be seen. And whether it's organic or whether it's raised by outside groups, it still is there, and it's something that the administration is going to have to really seriously look at in the upcoming weeks.
And Josh, very quickly, the president goes on the road tomorrow out to Indiana to begin to sell health care himself. He's going to talk about the economy, but it's hard to imagine he won't speak about health care. Do you think the White House is in danger of losing control of the message?
They need to respond fast. They need to show that they have a quick, rapid response and have a response to a lot of the people who are very concerned about their economic security. Healthcare is a major part of that, and I don't think in this opening stretch, in this opening debate, the administration has had the upper hand in the healthcare debate.
All right. Josh, thank you very much. Josh Kraushaar of Politico this afternoon. Josh, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Now weighing in on both sides of this debate are Pappas with FreedomWorks, one of the groups that is encouraging these town hall turnouts And beside him, DNC's National Press Secretary, Harry Sevugan. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Now, Max, let me start with you. Let me ask, first of all, your group is on the web. You know who this audience is. You are encouraging this kind of turnout, people to come talk to your elected representatives. I mean, no one's questioning that. Tell us who it is you are reaching out to, and what's the argument you want them to make to these Congress folks?
Well, FreedomWorks has been involved in grassroots politics for over 25 years, and we've got a large membership across the country that we reach out to every congressional recess. And we always encourage them to contact their congressman and ask questions and find out what they support. As Josh pointed out, usually we're not able to get this many people out. We always get a small number of our constituents, of our members out. But what we're hearing back from our members now is, wow, there are a lot more people at these town hall events on our side than we're used to ever seeing. And we're very flattered at the idea that we could gin up this many people with this level of excitement, but you can't gin that up. And we know from 25 years of trying to do it. This only happens when people are really concerned, and people are really concerned. They're talking about a very big deal and a very big change to their lives, and that's this proposal that we have for healthcare.
All right, Hari, let me ask you to react to that.
Well, first, I think Max is right that there is a level of concern, and there are legitimate questions. That's why we have these town halls, to answer these questions. People are very concerned. In the last decade alone, we've seen the average family's premiums double. They're continuing to rise at 3 times the rate of their wages. 15 years ago, small businesses, about 60% offered health insurance to their employees. Now it's down to 40, and it keeps dropping. So there is legitimate concern. There are real efforts underway to reform, but what's not helping is sort of the venomous, angry yelling and screaming that we're seeing at these town halls. Max raised an interesting point. He said that FreedomWorks has been involved in grassroots efforts for the last 25 years. I would take some issue with that. And it's not just me. There are a number of publications that have done the same. In 2006, the Washington Post reported that FreedomWorks struck a deal with something called the Medical Savings Insurance Company, in which the Medical Savings Insurance Company exchanged cut-rate insurance policies and funneled those people over to FreedomWorks to add to their list. And if the Washington Post might be too liberal for you, let's go to the Wall Street Journal.
But Hari, tell me where you're going with that. You're making a point.
I think, Wyatt, that a number of the events that we're seeing here are manufactured outrage. When Max makes the claim and FreedomWorks makes the claim that they have been engaging in grassroots activity, I think that is false. And it's not just me saying that. It is the Washington Post that has documented it. It is the Wall Street Journal, which, quote, says that FreedomWorks has been engaged in, quote, fake grassroots activity. And this was just last year. And if the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post aren't enough for you, FreedomWorks' own spokesman,
You know, it's interesting
Adam
you bring up
Brandon,
the Wall Street Journal article, because we forwarded that article to our membership. And you can ask the reporter from the Wall Street Journal who said we conduct fake grassroots, and we said, all right, journalists, do you want to see what fake grassroots look like? We sent it to our members. They sent him videos day after day after day to show their real grassroots activities, and that they're real people in North Carolina and in Oregon and Alabama and Texas and California. And he's got his inbox inundated. So that is an actual article that ran in the Wall Street Journal.
Gentlemen, before you go there, Max, one of the very, I think, most legitimate questions to ask of you, though, is this about disrupting these congressmen and women as they attempt to explain health care reform? Is it about dialogue, or is it about disruption?
No, I've watched the videos of the different town halls that happened, and unfortunately some of them have devolved into too much shouting. We would ideally like this to be a civilized discussion where the members show up, the constituents show up, and they have a discussion back and forth. We have no control over how the people react when they're at the town hall. And what you're seeing, and the reason I think that the town halls have turned out as they have with the yelling, is people are extremely concerned, and we don't encourage our activists to do this sort of thing where they get out there and yell like that. We want a dialogue.
Max, you don't see yourself at all responsible for some of the anger, the loudness, if you will, the attempt to shout down the representatives?
We write policy papers and we distribute them to our members to make sure that they're the most informed people at the town hall meetings, so they'll be able to engage in a civil dialogue. That hasn't happened. Some people clearly are doing a lot of shouting. That's not what we want. What we're trying to get to, we want healthcare reform. We don't like the current system. But what we don't like is the proposal to go toward more government intervention rather than trying to get a competitive market where you have good quality outcomes at affordable prices.
Well, I would
Hari,
disagree.
let me go back to, first of all, you can respond to him, but I want to lead you into that by pointing out that various congressmen Congressman Bishop in New York has said there were way too many people there not interested in hearing anything, no one there to listen. Congressman Doggett called the people who surrounded him, it felt like a mob. How does the DNC see what's going on?
Well, I think Max raised an interesting point. He said that FreedomWorks and their allied organizations write policy papers. They also write memos. There was a memo that Politico reported on yesterday in which FreedomWorks directed its members to attend these rallies and shout down
That's
congressmen.
inaccurate. That is entirely inaccurate.
It is in Politico.
There was a left wing.
Memo,
There was a left. I saw the post. There's a left wing blogger who wrote an article that implied that. I looked up. I was asked about this yesterday. There's a guy who's part of a group in Connecticut, of the Tea Party group, who wrote a memo. He has his own group, and somehow this left-wing blogger connected him to FreedomWorks because we've worked with the Tea Party Patriots to put on some of the Tea Parties. He's not. We checked our database. He's not one of our members. He's not affiliated with us in any way.
There is no doubt that at these events, as Congressman Doggett has alluded to, and at the event in Pennsylvania, that there is not a constructive dialogue taking place. And it is because of this AstroTurf movement that has infiltrated these events. Whereas the purpose of these events is to answer legitimate questions and really carry on a dialogue and find solutions. Instead, we are getting memos that say shout down congressmen that are trying to find solutions. Instead, we are seeing signs with members with devil horns coming out of their ears. Instead, we are seeing signs with Nazi symbolism on it. None of that is constructive. None of that is leading towards a solution. And yet, we see not only is FreedomWorks encouraging this kind of activity, but the Republican Party is embracing it.
Harry, I must ask though, if I take your point, but if you watch some of these videos, not everyone there is of the bust-in variety. There are people asking real questions about how can the government that is taking over things like AIG and cash for clunkers, can't manage that. How are they going to manage health care? You hear that as a question. You hear questions about the level of national debt and the level of new taxes that are going to be taking place. That not all of that is bust-in and ginned-up outrage.
I absolutely agree with you. Why there are legitimate questions out there, and there's room for legitimate discussion. Unfortunately, that legitimate discussion is drowned out when right-wing groups and the Republican Party encourage this kind of behavior, and that is what we are seeing repeatedly. So if people want their questions answered and we want a civilized conversation, we can't continue down this road of bussing in folks to yell and scream down not only members, but citizens that have legitimate questions, citizens who can't afford their health care anymore, want to know how a plan might help them, what's in it for them. And instead of that, what we're getting is a chance of just say no. And we've seen that from Republicans. We've seen it from the right for too long. People want answers, not more chance of just say no.
Max, let me let you have the last word very quickly, please.
I'd like to agree with you entirely and hope that you'll encourage the SEIU, which has announced its Muscle for Money program in conjunction with ACORN, which is under investigation in 14 states for criminal activity in the last campaign, to not do that exact same sort of thing, which is exactly what their Muscle for Money program does. So maybe we can come to that agreement.
Both of you on record for a more civil dialogue. Fair to say?
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for the conversation. Max
Thanks,
Pappas and Harry Sevugan from the DNC. Thank you. Turning now to a more inspirational story from the field on how sports can sometimes change our lives. Our Fernando Suarez takes a look at homeless soccer. Homeless men and women getting a second chance on the soccer fields.
It may look and sound like the FIFA World Cup, but this isn't your ordinary soccer tournament, because despite their love for the game, the one thing all these people have in common, they're all homeless.
A lot of our folks have grown up in poverty, have suffered abuse, have aged out of group homes. They've never been part of a team.
Lawrence Cann is the president and CEO of Street Soccer USA, a co-ed league started less than 4 years ago, designed to take people off the streets and onto the playing fields.
Well, soccer is the world's game, it's the people's game, and I think when people are homeless and marginalized and aren't part of a social system and network, it's really powerful to connect them to what is basically the largest community in the world, which is the soccer community.
So how does soccer help homelessness? According to Can, these goals might be measured in points. His goals are all measured in stats.
And what we found, as all of our programs report back, that 75% of the people who stick with the team, who come to 10 practices or more, within a year, they have either moved off the street, pursued further education, or have addressed one of those underlying issues of homelessness.
New York's team goalie, Andres Negron, hasn't been so lucky. Even with soccer in his life, he's been in and out of homelessness for more than 8 years.
Every time I try to move on, the waves was so humongous that I wound up drowning in them and sucking myself even more.
But Negron doesn't have to look far for inspiration. Teammate Manhattan-born Christopher Lodgeson was living on the streets just 4 months ago.
The shelter that I walked into is literally across the street, maybe 10 steps from the hospital where I was born at, Bellevue.
Like most people, Lodgeson said he never imagined he would end up homeless. But after losing a job at a posh New York City restaurant, he had nowhere to turn.
Like I said, you feel angry with yourself, you feel disgusted with yourself, you feel like, how did I get here? And you begin to question, it kind of rocks you to your core.
He says he's been fighting a debilitating depression. The only thing that's helped him remind him of his past was sports.
To be on a team again and to be back playing sports again was somewhat of a return to normalcy for me.
With the help of Street Soccer USA, Lodgeson says he's been able to find a job, even an apartment. As for Lawrence Can, Lodgeson's story is no surprise for him. Solving homelessness has always been a simple solution.
And athletics is beautiful because on the athletic field, it's a great example to society. It's a level playing field. There's referees that enforce the rules. And whether they win or lose, they can play hard and feel good about it. And that's something when you're locked out of work, when you're homeless, you don't have a chance to do. So it makes them feel empowered, makes them feel alive.
And that's a goal clearly worth striving for. Fernando Suarez, CBS News, Washington.
And that's Washington Unplugged for today. Please join us again tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. on CBSNews.com. I'm Wyatt Andrews. Thank you for watching.